The hall was already loud when she stepped inside. Voices overlapped like clashing blades, laughter too sharp, greetings too loud, the sound of a pack that belonged to itself. Warm torchlight spilled across carved stone and long wooden tables, but none of that warmth reached her. It slid past her shoulders, skipped over her bowed head, and settled on everyone else. She paused just beyond the doorway, fingers tightening around the edge of her sleeve. Just for a heartbeat. Long enough to steady herself. Long enough to remind her body that she was allowed to take up space, even if no one wanted her to. No one turned to look at her. That hurt more than it should have. She moved anyway, steps quiet, practiced. She knew how to walk without drawing attention, how to make herself smaller without appearing afraid. Her gaze stayed low, focused on the stone beneath her feet as she crossed the hall toward the far wall, where shadows gathered and expectations disappeared. She almost made it. Almost. Well, a voice drawled behind her, smooth and perfectly timed. Look who decided to crawl out of hiding. The words were not loud. They didn't need to be. They cut through the noise with ease, and the air seemed to pause around them. Her shoulders went rigid. She did not turn at once. Experience had taught her that reacting too quickly only pleased him. When she finally faced him, she kept her expression neutral, her spine straight, her heart carefully locked behind her ribs. He stood there as if he owned the space between them. Her ex looked nothing like the wolf she had once known. Power had shaped him, sharpened his smile, broadened his stance, drawn others into his orbit. He leaned casually against a chair, one arm draped over its back, as though this entire gathering existed for his amusement. His eyes skimmed over her slowly, deliberately. You still come to these things, he continued, lips curving. I figured you'd learned your place by now. A few wolves nearby laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly. No one told him to stop. Her throat tightened, but she kept her voice calm. I was assigned to help, she said. I'll stay out of the way. He chuckled, shaking his head as if she'd said something endearing. You always were good at that. Staying quiet. Staying useful. The word settled over her like dust. Useful. She felt it then, the familiar pressure in her chest, the ache that never quite faded. She lowered her gaze, not because she was ashamed, but because meeting his eyes took more strength than she could afford to spend. She stepped past him. The space between them was narrow, crowded with bodies and unspoken history. She made sure not to touch him, not even by accident. The moment she passed, his voice followed her. Careful, he said lightly. Wouldn't want anyone thinking you still matter. Her hands trembled once. She hid them. At the far wall, she busied herself with a stack of cups that didn't need arranging. She aligned them carefully, one by one, as though order could be found in small, meaningless tasks. Around her, the gathering resumed its rhythm. Conversations picked back up. Decisions were made. Laughter returned. Just like that, she disappeared again. She told herself she was fine. She had learned how to endure, how to survive by being invisible. Pain was quieter when you didn't ask anyone to see it. Still, something felt different. Not in her. Around her. The torchlight flickered, though the flames were steady. A hush rippled briefly through the far end of the hall, so subtle she wondered if she imagined it. She lifted her head slightly, senses pricking in a way they hadn't in years. The feeling passed. Or so she thought. She went on working, moving between tables, avoiding eyes, avoiding him. Yet the weight remained, pressing against her awareness like a presence she couldn't name. Once, she thought she heard a low sound beneath the noise, deep, resonant, not quite a growl. Her breath caught. She stilled, listening. Nothing. Her heart scolded her for hoping. Somewhere beyond the reach of the torchlight, in a place where shadows gathered thick and watchful, a pair of golden eyes followed her every movement. The Alpha did not step forward. He did not speak. Power coiled beneath his stillness, ancient and restrained. His wolf stirred. Not in anger. In recognition. He watched the way she held herself together when the world pressed in. The way she swallowed her pain instead of letting it spill. The way she endured cruelty with a quiet dignity that did not beg to be seen. And something old and dangerous took note. She felt none of it. only the faintest shiver along her spine. Only the strange, unexplainable sense that she was not as alone as she had always believed. She stacked the final cup and stepped back, unaware that somewhere in the dark, a silent promise had already been made. She left the hall before the torches burned low. No one stopped her. No one asked where she was going or whether she would return. That, too, had become familiar. She moved through the corridors with the quiet ease of someone who had learned not to disturb the world around her, her footsteps softened by habit rather than intent. Outside, the night air was cool and damp. The moon hung low, veiled by drifting clouds, its light fractured across stone and earth. She drew a slow breath, filling her lungs until the tightness eased just a little. This was the part she endured best, the aftermath. The silence after humiliation always hurt less than the moment itself. She followed the narrow path toward the workers' quarters, past buildings that once felt like home. Once. Before things had changed. Before she had changed. Back then, wolves had greeted her by name. Back then, she had walked with her shoulders back, laughter easy, hope unguarded. Before the bond had snapped. She did not think about that night often. She had trained herself not to. Memory was a cruel thing when allowed too much freedom. Still, the past had a way of bleeding into the present, especially when wounds were left to heal alone. She pushed open the door to her small room and stepped inside. The space was simple. Bare stone walls, a narrow bed, a small table near the window. Everything had its place. She needed it that way. Order helped keep the ache contained. She set her things down and leaned her forehead briefly against the door once it was closed. Just for a moment. Just long enough to let her breath falter. Then she straightened. Weakness was safest when no one could witness it. She crossed the room and lit a single candle. The flame flickered to life, casting shadows that danced along the walls. In the quiet, her thoughts grew louder. He had risen quickly after the bond broke. Everyone said it was coincidence. That his strength had always been there. That leadership suited him. She had nodded along with the rest, swallowing the truth that sat heavy in her chest. Because when he rose, she fell just as swiftly. Whispers followed her after that. A broken mate. A failed bond. A wolf too weak to hold what fate had offered. Eventually, people stopped whispering. They simply stopped seeing her. She sat on the edge of the bed and rested her hands in her lap, palms up. She studied them as if they belonged to someone else. Scarred in places. Calloused from work no one else wanted. Proof that she had remained useful even when she had ceased to matter. Her wolf was quiet. Too quiet. Once, that silence had terrified her. She had waited for pain, for madness, for the hollow ache others warned would come when a bond shattered. But none of it arrived the way they said it would. Instead, her wolf had retreated, curling inward, leaving her with a stillness that felt wrong. Cursed, some had whispered. She had believed them for a time. Now, she simply accepted it. Not every wolf was meant to roar. Some were meant to endure. A soft knock sounded at her door. She startled, heart leaping, then rose to answer it. On the other side stood Mara, a young omega with tired eyes and a bundle of folded cloth in her arms. "I brought these," Mara said quietly. "They said you might need them." She took the cloth, surprised. "Thank you." Mara hesitated, fingers tightening around the edge of her sleeve. "I'm sorry about earlier," she added. "I didn't laugh. I swear." "I know," she replied gently. And she did. Kindness had taught her to recognize itself, even when it was afraid. After the door closed again, she sat back down, the bundle resting beside her. That small moment, brief, fragile, warmed something deep in her chest. Proof that not all softness had vanished from the pack. Outside, a presence lingered. She did not sense it directly. Only a subtle awareness, like the feeling of being watched by the forest itself. She moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. The trees stood silent, their branches barely stirring. Nothing was there. Still, she pressed a hand to her chest, puzzled by the faint hum beneath her skin. Not fear. Not pain. Something else. Unseen, the alpha watched from beyond the reach of light, his expression unreadable. He had learned her story without words, through the way others treated her, through the weight she carried without complaint. He recognized the mark of a bond broken unjustly, recognized the stillness of a wolf that was not gone, only waiting. She believed she had been forgotten. She was wrong. The night deepened, and as she lay down to rest, she did not notice the way the shadows seemed to lean closer, attentive and protective. Nor did she hear the low, distant sound that echoed once through the trees, a vow made not in words, but in instinct. Sleep claimed her slowly, and somewhere in the dark, destiny remained awake. She woke before dawn with the strange certainty that she had not been alone. The room was exactly as she had left it. The candle burned low, its wick bent, a thin trail of smoke curling toward the ceiling. Pale moonlight slipped through the window, resting softly on the floor. Nothing was out of place. And yet her pulse refused to settle. She lay still, listening. The pack slept around her. She could sense that much. The familiar quiet hum of shared territory, distant heartbeats layered beneath stone and earth. No threat. No alarm. Still, the feeling lingered. As if something had watched over her dreams and only just withdrawn. She pushed the thought aside and rose, washing her face in cool water before pulling on her work cloak. The day would not wait for unsettled thoughts. It never did. Outside, morning crept slowly across the sky, mist clinging to the ground. She made her way toward the storehouse, arms folded against the chill. A few wolves passed her along the path, nodding absently, eyes sliding past her without pause. Forgotten. She accepted that word like a truth carved into bone. The storehouse door was heavy, old wood swollen with age. She reached for the handle and pulled. It swung open easily. She frowned. She was certain she had locked it the night before. Perhaps someone had come early. She stepped inside, senses alert, but the space was empty. Neat. Undisturbed. She shook her head at herself and set to work, inventorying supplies, stacking crates, doing the quiet tasks that filled her days. Twice, she felt it again. That subtle shift in the air. A pressure she could not see or smell, but felt all the same. Each time she turned, expecting to find someone behind her. Each time, there was nothing. Later, as she carried a crate across the yard, a shout rang out nearby, sharp, angry. Two wolves argued near the training grounds, tempers flaring, bodies tense with the promise of violence. She tried to skirt around them, eyes down, steps quick. One of them stumbled backward, straight into her path. She gasped as the crate slipped from her grip. It should have crashed into the ground. Should have shattered glass and drawn attention she did not want. It didn't. The crate halted mid-fall, tipping just enough to settle safely at her feet. She stared. The wolves stopped arguing. One blinked, then laughed it off, muttering something about luck. They moved on, the moment forgotten as quickly as it had come. She remained frozen, breath shallow, heart pounding. That wasn't luck. Her hands trembled as she knelt to steady the crate. A strange warmth lingered in the air, fading quickly, like heat after a flame is snuffed out. She worked the rest of the morning with that awareness pressing against her senses. Doors opened more easily. Paths cleared just before she reached them. Raised voices softened when she passed, as if instinct warned others away. By midday, she began to doubt herself. You're imagining things, she told herself. Wanting protection doesn't mean it exists. Still, when she stepped into a narrow corridor and nearly collided with him again, her ex, she braced herself for the familiar sting. He smirked, ready words already forming. Then he stopped. His gaze flicked past her shoulder, his expression shifting, just for a second. Unease tightened his jaw. Whatever he saw made his posture stiffen, his confidence falter. He scoffed and stepped away without a word. She stood there, stunned. He had never walked away before. She waited until he disappeared around the corner before releasing the breath she'd been holding. Slowly, cautiously, she glanced behind her. The corridor was empty. No footsteps. No scent. Only the faintest echo of something powerful retreating into shadow. Far above the packed grounds, on a stone balcony hidden from view, the alpha watched with eyes like molten gold. He did not move. Did not speak. His presence alone was enough to bend the currents of the territory, enough to make lesser wolves hesitate without knowing why. He saw the confusion on her face. Saw the way she tried to reason away instinct. She did not know her wolf yet. Did not know the depth of what slept beneath years of silence. He did. He had known the moment his gaze first settled on her, the moment his own wolf had gone utterly still in recognition. Rare. Hidden. Unbroken. He could have stepped forward. Could have ended the cruelty with a word, a command no one would dare defy. But fate was a careful thing. And she needed time. That night, as she returned to her room, she paused beneath the open sky. Clouds parted briefly, allowing moonlight to spill down in a pale, silver wash. She lifted her face without realizing it, breath catching as something deep within her stirred. Not pain. Not fear. Awareness. She pressed a hand to her chest, puzzled by the faint warmth there, by the sense of being seen without being judged. Somewhere beyond her sight, a low growl rolled through the darkness. Quiet, controlled, a promise rather than a threat. She shivered, though the night was not cold. And for the first time in years, she did not feel entirely alone. The summons came just after midday. She was stacking grain sacks when a young runner appeared at the doorway, breathless, eyes darting everywhere but at her. "They want you at the council hall," he said quickly, as if the words themselves burned. "Now." Her hands stilled. "For what?" she asked, though a quiet dread had already begun to coil in her stomach. The runner shook his head. "I was only told to fetch you." He fled before she could say more. She wiped her palms against her skirt and followed the path toward the heart of the pack grounds. Each step felt heavier than the last. The sense of being watched returned, stronger now, closer, yet it did nothing to ease the tightening in her chest. The council hall doors stood open. Inside, voices overlapped in sharp fragments. Accusation. Disapproval. A single, familiar tone threaded through them all, smooth, confident, carrying just enough concern to sound convincing. Her ex. She stepped across the threshold. The room fell quiet. Dozens of eyes turned toward her at once. Some were curious. Some annoyed. Others already decided. She felt them measure her worth in a single glance and come up wanting. "There she is," her ex said gently, as if relieved. He stood near the center of the room, hands folded behind his back. Authority suited him too well. "I was hoping you'd come quickly. This is unfortunate." "What is?" she asked. A council elder leaned forward, expression stern. "Supplies have gone missing from the storehouse. High-grade weapons oil. Rare herbs. Items only certain workers have access to." The words landed like stones. Her gaze flicked to her ex before she could stop herself. He met her eyes with practiced sympathy. "She was working there yesterday," he said. "Alone." Murmurs rippled through the room. "I didn't take anything," she said quietly. "You can search my quarters." "We will," another elder replied. "But circumstances are troubling." Her ex sighed. "I didn't want to believe it either. Truly. But she's been struggling for some time. Desperation can drive wolves to make poor choices." Her hands curled into fists. This was how he did it. Not with shouting. Not with open cruelty. With concern sharp enough to cut deeper than anger ever could. "You know I wouldn't steal," she said, forcing herself to meet the elder's eyes. "I've never." "Enough," the first elder said. "Until this is resolved, you will be relieved of your duties. You'll remain under watch." Under watch. The words echoed in her skull. Her ex stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you cooperate, this will go easier for you." She looked at him then. Really looked. And she saw it, the satisfaction he barely hid. The way this was not about missing supplies at all. It was about reminding her who held power now. "I didn't do this," she said again. Silence answered her. No one spoke in her defense. She was escorted out with eyes on her back, whispers blooming like rot in her wake. By the time she reached her room, 2 guards waited outside. They did not touch her, but their presence was clear. "You are no longer trusted." Inside, she sat on the edge of her bed, breath shallow, heart racing. The walls felt closer than they had ever been. For the first time in years, fear broke through her careful composure. This was different. This was dangerous. She pressed her hands to her temples, fighting the surge of emotion threatening to spill. The room seemed to darken at the edges, shadows stretching, thickening. And then, rage. Not hers. A violent pulse rippled through the air, unseen but undeniable. Somewhere beyond stone and distance, something powerful reacted to her pain with ferocity barely restrained. High above the council hall, the Alpha's fingers dug into the stone railing. The lie rang through the territory like a challenge. His wolf surged forward, hackles raised, a snarl building in his chest. The instinct to descend, to end this with a single command, roared through him. Mine, his wolf insisted. Not in ownership. In protection. He forced the growl back down, jaw tightening. Not yet. To strike now would only tighten the snare around her. The truth needed to surface cleanly. Publicly. Still, the effort cost him. The territory responded to his fury. Wolves faltered mid-step. Conversations died without explanation. Even the wind shifted, restless and sharp. Back in her room, she gasped as a sudden warmth flared beneath her breastbone. It startled her enough that she rose unsteadily to her feet, pressing a hand to her chest. What is happening? She whispered. The warmth spread, faint but real, like embers stirred after years of cold ash. Her wolf did not rise. Did not speak. But it moved. Just enough for her to feel it. Outside, the guards exchanged uneasy glances, sensing something they could not name. The pack itself seemed to hold its breath. And in the quiet that followed accusation and lies, a line had been crossed. The past had struck again. This time, it would not go unanswered. The night closed in slowly, as if it were reluctant to arrive. She sat on the edge of her bed with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, listening to the distant sounds of the pack settling into sleep. Laughter drifted faintly through the stone, followed by doors shutting, footsteps fading, life continuing as if nothing had happened. As if her world had not tilted. The guards outside her door remained silent. They did not speak to her. They did not need to. Their presence was a reminder, steady and unyielding. You are being watched. She rose and paced the length of the room, steps uneven. Her thoughts circled the same questions again and again, finding no answers. The accusation replayed itself in her mind, each word sharper than the last. The look on his face, concern shaped carefully into a weapon. She pressed her palms against the wall, breathing through the tightness in her chest. For years, she had endured quietly. She had accepted being overlooked, dismissed, even mocked. But this was different. This could destroy her. If the elders decided against her, she would be cast out. Or worse, made an example of. The pack valued order above mercy, and she had learned the hard way how easily mercy vanished when power demanded sacrifice. Her knees weakened, and she slid down the wall until she sat on the cold stone floor. I didn't do this, she whispered into the empty room. The words sounded small. For the first time since the bond had broken, tears burned behind her eyes. She fought them at first, jaw clenched, breath shaky. Then the fight slipped from her grasp, and one tear escaped, tracing a silent path down her cheek. It fell onto her hand. Something stirred. The warmth she had felt earlier returned, stronger now, spreading slowly through her chest. She froze, breath hitching, as the sensation deepened, not painful, not frightening, but heavy with emotion she did not recognize. Sorrow. Anger. A deep, aching refusal to surrender. Her heart began to pound. She pressed both hands to her chest, eyes wide. What are you doing? She murmured, though she did not know who she was asking. Inside her, something shifted. Not awakening fully. Not yet. But stretching. A low sound escaped her throat, barely audible, more breath than voice. She curled forward, hugging herself as the warmth pulsed once more, steadier this time, like a heartbeat answering her own. Her wolf. The realization struck her so suddenly it stole her breath. You're still there, she whispered, disbelief threading her voice. For so long, she had believed the silence meant absence. That she had been abandoned even by the one part of herself meant to stand beside her. The warmth responded, not with words, but with presence. She laughed softly, brokenly, tears spilling freely now. Not from despair this time, but from the fragile, terrifying hope blooming in her chest. A sound echoed outside. Footsteps. She stiffened, wiping her face quickly as the guards shifted. One of them murmured something to the other, unease clear in his tone. She sensed it then, a pressure beyond the door, subtle but immense, like the air before a storm. Moments later, the guards moved away. Not toward her door. Away from it. Her breath caught. She rose slowly and approached the door, heart racing. She placed her palm against the wood, feeling a strange, steady calm settle over her nerves. You're safe. The thought was not her own. Outside, unseen and unannounced, the Alpha stood in the shadows of the corridor, his presence bending the space around him. He had not come to be seen. He had come to make sure no one crossed the threshold. Not tonight. He felt her distress like a blade to the chest. Felt the fragile stirring of her wolf, the way it reached out in confusion and pain. His own answered instantly, a deep, resonant growl vibrating through him as he anchored himself in control. Easy, he thought, not to her, but to the instinct roaring inside him. She needs time. Still, he extended his awareness, wrapping it gently around her space. Not a claim. Not a command. A shield. Inside the room, she sagged against the door, relief washing through her so suddenly her legs nearly gave out. She slid down once more, resting her forehead against her knees, breathing in slow, careful pulls. For the first time since the accusation, the fear loosened its grip. She slept that night curled on the floor, exhaustion finally dragging her under. Her dreams were strange, filled with moonlight and movement, with the sense of running without pain, of being watched not with judgment, but with unwavering focus. When she woke before dawn, the warmth lingered. So did the certainty that something had changed. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know how she would survive what lay ahead. But she knew this. She was no longer entirely alone. And somewhere nearby, a powerful presence remained awake, waiting for the moment when silence would no longer be enough. Morning arrived quietly, as if the world itself were unsure how to greet her. She woke on the floor where sleep had claimed her, the stone cold beneath her palms, her limbs stiff and heavy. For a moment, she lay still, listening. No guard stood outside the door now. No murmured voices. No sense of accusation pressing against the walls. Only that lingering warmth inside her chest. It was faint, but it was there. Steady. Awake. She sat up slowly, pressing her hand over her heart as if to confirm it was real. Her wolf did not rise to greet her. Did not speak. But it no longer felt distant. No longer sealed behind silence. You stayed, she whispered. The warmth answered by settling deeper, like something choosing to remain. She pushed herself to her feet and smoothed her clothes, splashing water on her face until the red in her eyes faded. Whatever waited beyond her door, she would meet it standing. She always had. When she stepped into the corridor, she stopped short. He was there. Not in shadow this time. Not watching from a distance. He stood at the far end of the hall, tall and immovable, his presence filling the space without effort. Power radiated from him in controlled waves, ancient, disciplined, undeniable. The pack's scent bent subtly around him, as if the territory itself recognized its king. The Alpha. She had seen him before, of course. From afar. On raised platforms and stone balconies. A figure of authority, distant and untouchable. Never like this. Never close enough to feel the weight of his attention settle fully on her. Her breath caught. His eyes met hers, golden, sharp, and startlingly calm. There was no hunger there. No judgment. Only focus, deep and steady, as if he was seeing something no one else had ever noticed. Come, he said. The word was quiet. Not a command. An invitation. Her feet moved before doubt could stop them. Each step toward him felt unreal, as though she were crossing into a different world. She stopped a careful distance away, hands clasped tightly in front of her. I was told to remain under watch, she said, unsure why she felt the need to explain. You were, he replied. You are not anymore. Her pulse stumbled. Why? His gaze never left her face. Because the watch was unjust. No one had ever said that aloud. She swallowed. They think I stole from the storehouse. I know. The certainty in his voice sent a shiver through her. She lifted her chin slightly, meeting his eyes despite the instinct to look away. Then you know I didn't. I do. The words landed softly, but they cracked something open inside her. For a heartbeat, she forgot how to breathe. Why help me? She asked. You don't know me. Something unreadable crossed his expression, gone too quickly to grasp. I know enough. He turned and began walking, clearly expecting her to follow. After a moment's hesitation, she did. They moved through the corridors together, wolves they passed lowering their heads instinctively, confusion flickering across faces unused to seeing her at his side. He did not touch her. Not when she stumbled slightly on uneven stone. Not when they passed close enough that his arm brushed the wall beside her shoulder. He kept his distance with deliberate care, as if restraint were a choice he made anew with every step. They stopped in a small, open chamber overlooking the forest. Sunlight filtered in through tall arches, illuminating dust motes that drifted lazily in the air. You will stay here for now, he said. No one will bother you. Her heart hammered. What do you want in return? His gaze sharpened, not with anger, but with something like disappointment. Protection is not a transaction. She flinched, shame prickling beneath her skin. She was so used to paying for kindness that the idea of it being freely given felt dangerous. I'm sorry, she murmured. He studied her for a long moment. Then, more gently, you have nothing to apologize for. Silence settled between them. It was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy with things unsaid. She felt his attention like a steady warmth, grounding rather than consuming. I won't claim you, he said suddenly. Her breath caught, confusion flashing through her. I didn't think. I won't touch you, he continued calmly. I won't bind you to me in any way. Not unless you choose it. The words echoed inside her, startling in their respect. She nodded slowly, unsure what to say. Rest, he said. You've endured enough. As he turned to leave, something inside her stirred, a flicker of longing she did not understand. Wait, she said softly. He paused, glancing back. Thank you, she whispered. For the first time, his expression softened. Just enough. He inclined his head and stepped away, leaving her bathed in sunlight and silence. She sank onto the stone bench, heart racing, mind reeling. The warmth in her chest pulsed once, stronger than before. Outside, unseen, his wolf paced restlessly. He had chosen restraint. But the bond, whatever it was, had already begun to tighten. And both of them could feel it. The peace did not last. It never did. By evening, the corridors outside her chamber filled with the restless hum of voices. Too many, too tense. The air itself seemed to tighten, carrying the metallic edge of fear and anticipation. She sensed it before anyone came for her, a pressure building behind her eyes, beneath her ribs, as if the territory were bracing for impact. Her wolf stirred uneasily. Not warmth this time. Warning. A sharp knock struck the door. She rose slowly, heart pounding, and opened it to find two guards waiting. Their expressions were rigid, eyes avoiding hers. Neither looked pleased to be there. The council has reconvened, one said. You are to come with us. She nodded. There was no point resisting. There never had been. As they led her back through the pack grounds, she noticed the way wolves gathered along the paths, whispering behind raised hands. Faces she recognized. Faces she had worked beside. None met her gaze. The council hall loomed ahead, torches blazing brighter than before, as if light alone could cleanse what waited inside. She stepped across the threshold. The room was full. Every elder stood in place. Warriors lined the walls. At the center, calm and composed, stood her ex. His posture was relaxed, his expression grave with concern so convincing it made her stomach twist. She's here, he said quietly. The doors closed behind her with a final, echoing thud. An elder spoke. New evidence has come to light. Her chest tightened. What evidence? Her ex turned to face her, sorrow etched carefully across his features. I didn't want it to be true, he said. But the truth matters more than personal history. He gestured, and a small bundle was brought forward, cloth wrapped tightly around something solid. Recognition struck her like a blow. No, she whispered. The cloth was unwrapped to reveal rare herbs from the storehouse. Herbs she had handled that very morning. Herbs now arranged neatly, damning in their silence. These were found hidden beneath the floor of her quarters, the elder announced. The room erupted. Accusations flew like stones. Words blurred together: traitor, thief, unworthy, broken. She stood frozen at the center of it all, the sound crashing over her in waves she could barely endure. I didn't put those there, she said, voice trembling despite her effort. Someone is lying. Her ex sighed softly. You see, he said to the council. She refuses to accept responsibility. I fear her wolf's instability has driven her to desperation. That did it. Her wolf surged, not outward, but inward, coiling tight, furious, wounded. The warmth flared painfully in her chest, and she gasped, clutching at her sternum as if she could contain it. High above, unseen, the alpha felt it. The bond, faint but undeniable, shuddered. His control snapped taut. She is innocent. The voice did not come from her. It did not come from the council. It rolled through the hall like distant thunder, deep and resonant, carrying authority no one dared ignore. Every head turned. The alpha stepped forward from the shadows near the high dais, his presence commanding the space without effort. Golden eyes burned as they fixed on the council, then on the man standing so smugly at the center. Silence fell, thick, stunned, absolute. You will withdraw that accusation, the alpha said calmly. Her ex stiffened, shock flickering across his face before he smoothed it away. With respect, my alpha, the evidence was planted, the alpha cut in. And you know it. A ripple of unease swept the room. The elders exchanged glances. One stepped forward cautiously. If you have proof. I will, the alpha replied. In time. Her heart leapt, then sank. Not now. Not enough. The alpha turned to her, his gaze steady, regret flickering briefly beneath the surface. Until then, the law must stand. The words struck harder than any accusation. She stared at him, disbelief crashing through her chest. He had come. He had spoken. And still. You will be confined to the old holding grounds, an elder announced. Until the truth is uncovered. Guards moved toward her. The alpha's jaw tightened, his wolf raging beneath his control, but he did not stop them. He could not without tearing the pack apart and burying her beneath the fallout. She understood that. It did not make it hurt less. As the guards took her arms, she looked back at him once. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw something that stole her breath. Promise. Not abandonment. But it felt like both as they led her away. The holding grounds lay beyond the main territory, old stone cells half reclaimed by the forest. Cold. Isolated. Meant to break spirits. When the door slammed shut behind her, the finality echoed deep in her bones. She sank to the floor, breath coming in shallow gasps as the darkness closed in. I trusted you, she whispered, not to him, but to the fragile hope she had dared to believe in. Her wolf howled then. Not aloud. Inside. The sound tore through her chest, raw and furious and awake. Miles away, the alpha threw his head back and growled, the sound shaking the night air. His restraint was cracking. His wolf clawed at him, demanding action, demanding blood, demanding her freedom. Soon, he promised silently. Soon. But for now, she sat alone in the dark, believing, just for a moment, that even the one who had seen her had been forced to let her fall. And the lie, finally complete, tightened its grip on the pack. The cell was colder than she expected. Stone pressed in on all sides, damp with age and neglect, the scent of earth and rust thick in the air. A single slit high in the wall let in a pale ribbon of moonlight that barely touched the floor. The door had closed with a sound that still echoed inside her bones. She sat where the guards had left her, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tight as if she could hold herself together by force alone. The silence was absolute. No pack hum. No comforting awareness of others nearby. This place lay outside the territory's gentle heartbeat, a forgotten hollow meant for those already half erased. She swallowed, throat burning. It's just for now, she whispered to herself. Just until the truth comes out. The words felt thin. Her wolf stirred again, sharper this time, restless beneath her skin. Not the faint warmth she had felt before, but a pressure that demanded attention. She pressed her hand to her chest, breath hitching as the sensation deepened. Easy, she thought, though she wasn't sure how to soothe something she had never truly known. Hours passed, or minutes. Time unraveled in the dark. Then the pain came. It started as a tightness, sudden and fierce, wrapping around her ribs. She gasped, pitching forward as if struck, palm scraping against stone. The ache spread quickly, heat blooming outward in waves that stole her breath. No, she whispered, panic flaring. Please, not now. Her wolf did not retreat. It surged. The cell seemed to shrink as something vast pushed against the boundaries of her body, testing limits that had held for years. Images flickered behind her eyes, moonlit forests, silver paths through shadow, a presence beside her that radiated strength and certainty. Tears streamed down her face as she shook, caught between fear and something dangerously close to awe. I can't, she sobbed. I don't know how. The warmth answered, steady and insistent. You already do. The thought was not a voice, not words spoken aloud. It was knowing, ancient and patient and fierce with purpose. She cried out as the pressure peaked, her body arching as if pulled by unseen hands. The pain did not break her. It reshaped her. The chains around her wrists rattled softly, iron biting into skin as she clutched at herself, grounding. Then it passed. She collapsed onto the stone, breath coming in ragged pulls, heart hammering so hard she feared it might tear free. Sweat cooled quickly on her skin, leaving her shivering in the aftermath. Slowly, the world steadied. She lay there, stunned, as the warmth settled into something deeper, broader, no longer contained to a single point, but woven through her entire being. Her wolf did not recede. It stood. Not raging. Not wild. Awake. She laughed then, a broken, disbelieving sound that echoed softly off the stone. You were never gone, she whispered. You were waiting. Waiting for her to stop enduring. Waiting for her to need strength instead of silence. Above the holding grounds, the night air shuddered. The alpha felt it like a blade drawn across his chest, sharp, undeniable. His breath caught as the bond flared to life, no longer a whisper but a living thread pulled tight between them. She has awakened. His wolf surged forward, a low, thunderous growl rolling through him, not with fury this time, but with reverence. Rare, the instinct whispered. Chosen. He closed his eyes, gripping the stone railing beneath his hands as the truth settled into him with bone-deep certainty. Fated. Not because destiny demanded it. Because she had survived long enough to become herself. In the cell, she pushed herself upright, unsteady but determined. The moonlight seemed brighter now, the shadows less suffocating. She felt larger. Not in body, but in presence, as if she finally occupied the space she had always been denied. Footsteps approached outside the holding grounds, guards passing on their rounds, unaware of the shift that had already rewritten the night. She rose to her feet, chains clinking softly. I'm not broken, she whispered into the dark. The words were no longer a plea. They were a truth. Far away, the alpha opened his eyes, gold burning brighter than the moon. Time pressed in on him now, urgent and unforgiving. The lie could not be allowed to stand. Not after this. Soon, he promised again, this time not to instinct, but to her. Soon. And in the quiet cell, with iron at her wrists and power in her veins, she lifted her chin and waited, no longer afraid of what was waking inside her, but ready for what it would demand next. The council hall had never felt so heavy. Torches burned brighter than ever, casting long shadows across the stone walls. Wolves gathered in tense clusters, whispering urgently, glances darting toward the dais where the elders sat today. Fear hung thick in the air, mingling with anticipation. She was brought before them, chains cold against her wrists, eyes burning from sleepless nights in the holding grounds. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, But this time, unlike before, there was no surrender in her stance. She had felt the power stirring within, and though she was restrained, it lent her spine a strength she had never known she possessed. The ex stepped forward, face carefully neutral. "The evidence is clear," he began smoothly, voice dripping concern. "She has violated the trust of the pack. There is no room for debate. Her punishment must proceed." A ripple of murmurs ran through the assembled wolves, but it was carefully suppressed. Everyone waited, holding breath, poised like a drawn bow. Then it came. A movement at the high balcony, almost imperceptible at first. Heads turned. Torches flickered, and the murmur of voices faltered as the Alpha stepped into view. Not the Alpha she had glimpsed from afar, this was the Alpha King. His presence was a force. Gold eyes burned through the shadows, scanning the council, the ex, the gathered wolves. His gaze settled finally on her, unflinching, unyielding. He did not rush to her side. He did not bend low to remove her chains. He did not even speak at first. He simply watched. And in that silence, the hall realized, they had all misjudged her. The ex faltered, a flicker of unease crossing his carefully maintained composure. "Alpha," he said quickly, voice faltering, "this evidence." "It is false," the Alpha interrupted, low, controlled, carrying authority that made the walls themselves seem to lean forward. Every head snapped to him. Every jaw tightened. Even the elders, who prided themselves on impartiality, straightened as the weight of his words fell over them. "False?" one elder asked, voice trembling slightly. "Yes," the Alpha said. "And you know it." He stepped closer to the railing, his golden eyes sweeping across the room, resting finally on the ex with a cold precision that made the man flinch. "The evidence was planted. You know this. You staged it to humiliate her, to control her through fear. This pack cannot stand for such lies." A hush fell. The ex opened his mouth to argue, but the Alpha's presence stopped him. The power in his calm control was unmistakable, unyielding, absolute, and terrifying in its precision. "You have placed her in chains," the Alpha continued, voice resonant. "You have betrayed the law you claim to uphold. That ends now." The council stirred, whispers and protests rising. He raised a hand, and silence returned instantly. Wolves leaned back on instinct alone. "She is innocent," he said, and the words were thunder itself. "Your lies will not stand. Not while I draw breath. Not while my wolf senses her pain and mine answers it." She stared at him, chains cold on her wrists, heart hammering. She had never imagined a presence so vast, so certain, could care so fiercely. She had never imagined being seen, not just seen, but understood, without question. Her wolf stirred inside her, alive and full, responding to the Alpha's voice as if drawn by some ancient thread, some bond she had not yet fully understood. The ex faltered, desperation creeping into his face. "Alpha, you cannot." "I can," the Alpha said simply, cutting him off. His eyes flicked to the council. "The truth will be revealed. She will stand free of this false accusation, and those responsible will answer for their actions." The room trembled, not from wind, not from quake, but from the sheer force of his presence. The ex paled. The elders swallowed hard. Wolves averted their eyes, knowing instinctively that power far greater than theirs had entered their midst. And then he looked at her. Not with hunger. Not with judgment. But with recognition. With the steady weight of a guardian who had waited long enough. "You are not alone," he said quietly, so only she could hear. A shiver ran through her, and her chest tightened, not with fear, but with something deeper. Relief, yes. But also awe. The bond between them pulsed faintly, undeniable now, as if the Alpha himself had drawn out the power that had only just awakened within her. And though the council still had laws, and though the ex still plotted in desperation, she understood, finally, that she had someone who would fight for her. Not for fear of consequence, not for appearances, but for her alone. The ex's smirk vanished completely as he realized the tide had turned. For the first time, he was truly afraid. She swallowed, her chains suddenly seeming lighter. Somewhere deep inside, her wolf roared silently, awakening fully in the presence of its mate, in the presence of the Alpha who would not bend to injustice. And for the first time in her life, she felt that the storm of lies could be weathered, because he had chosen to stand with her. Outside, the wind shifted. A low growl rolled across the rooftops of the pack grounds, subtle, almost imperceptible, but those who listened closely felt it vibrate through their bones. Something had changed. Something permanent. And the next move, though still unknown, would be theirs together. Dawn arrived grey and heavy, with clouds hanging low over the pack grounds, as if the sky itself had been summoned to witness what was about to unfold. She stood at the center of the training grounds, chains cold against her wrists, the crowd forming a circle around her like predators closing in on prey. The whispering had grown louder overnight. Wolves discussing, judging, calculating. Some looked with curiosity, others with expectation of her failure. Her heart hammered, but this time the fear carried a strange clarity. She would survive. She had to. Her ex stood at the far edge of the circle, eyes sharp, posture perfect. He smiled, smug and cruel, convinced victory was already his. Every muscle in his body radiated confidence, as though the entire pack belonged to him. But she wasn't alone. Not anymore. High above, hidden on the stone balcony that overlooked the grounds, the Alpha King watched, his presence radiating calm but lethal focus. His golden eyes swept the circle, noting the tension, the whispers, the poised anticipation of combat or execution. He had not yet descended. Not yet. He had allowed this moment to come, understanding the importance of the public stage, the stakes, the lesson the pack needed to witness. Her chains rattled as she shifted her weight. The cold bit into her wrists, but she did not flinch. Her wolf thrummed inside her, awake and fierce, filling the spaces fear had once occupied. She raised her chin, meeting the eyes of her accusers with steady defiance. The elder overseeing the proceedings cleared his throat, a thin, wavering sound in the cold morning air. You stand accused of theft, deception, and betrayal of the pack. The evidence has been presented. The council has deliberated. Today, your fate will be decided. The ex stepped forward, eyes glinting with triumph. Let it be known, he said, voice carrying over the murmurs, that she has betrayed every trust placed in her, and that trust will be repaid in blood if necessary. A ripple of unease ran through the gathered wolves. Even some who had doubted her sensed the weight behind his words, the venom shaped into perfection. Her pulse raced, but she did not allow panic. Instead, she breathed slowly, letting the rhythm of her wolf anchor her. The chains no longer felt like restraint, they felt like preparation. From above, the Alpha's presence shifted subtly. His gaze fell upon her, steady, unwavering, promising protection without revealing his full power. His wolf growled low, deep, a rumble that no one in the circle could hear, but that trembled the air in some instinctive, unspoken way. The elder lifted his hand, signaling the start of the ritual punishment, a duel, or perhaps an execution. The crowd hushed instantly, aware that the moment demanded silence. The ex approached, smirking, clearly confident in the outcome. He drew a ceremonial blade from its sheath, its edge glinting sharply, light catching in a way that made the steel seem eager for her blood. She met his gaze, unflinching. Something inside her had shifted completely. The fear that had ruled her life these past weeks, the helplessness, the humiliation, the relentless isolation, was gone. Replaced by a quiet, burning certainty. Her wolf thrummed in resonance with the Alpha above, filling her with strength, focus, and clarity. Every nerve screamed awareness, every instinct sharpened like a blade honed to perfection. Her ex lunged. The first strike was swift, intended to overwhelm. But she moved, not quickly, but with deliberate precision. Her chains rattled, but she twisted, stepping aside, feeling the rhythm of her wolf guide her, anticipation and timing perfect. Gasps rose from the circle. She was not the weak, trembling wolf they had expected. Another strike. She blocked it with the chain itself, rolling with the movement, her heart synchronized with the pulse of her wolf, with the presence above. A silent force watching, waiting, protecting. The Alpha remained unseen, but his influence was undeniable. Every step she took, every instinctive movement, carried a weight that was not entirely her own. The ex stumbled slightly, disbelief flashing across his face. His smirk faltered as he realized, too late, that the wolf he had dismissed, the girl he had tried to humiliate, was no longer the same. And then, just as he lunged for a final strike, the alpha appeared. Not rushing to her side, not touching her, but descending into the circle with a presence so commanding the air itself seemed to bend. Wolves fell silent, hearts racing. The X froze, recognizing authority far beyond his comprehension. "You will stop," the alpha said, voice resonant and absolute, carrying over the open space. "Now." The X faltered. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Her wolf surged inside her, fierce and undeniable, a response to the alpha's command and the injustice she had endured. Chains rattled, sparks of power flaring subtly as if the very air acknowledged her awakening. The alpha's golden eyes met hers, a silent promise, a shield forged in presence alone. She inhaled, calm now, unafraid. The X had misjudged her. The pack had misjudged her. But nothing, not chains, not lies, not fear, could break what had awoken. The first drops of blood might have been meant for her, but they would fall on the X, on the Fossards, on the injustice he had tried to weave. And the day, though grim and tense, was about to turn irrevocably in her favor. Her wolf growled, low and steady, a sound only she could feel. It was the roar of the girl who had endured. And the alpha above, watching, knew the fight had only just begun. The pack grounds were silent, an almost unnatural hush settling over the assembled wolves. Even the wind seemed to wait, curling lazily around stone pillars and torchlight as if afraid to disturb the moment. She stood at the center of the circle, chains now irrelevant, her wolf thrumming beneath her skin like a living heartbeat. Every nerve pulsed with the energy she had discovered in the holding grounds, sharpened and steady. The crowd of wolves watched her, their previous whispers stilled by tension, fear, and awe. Her X trembled at the edge of the circle. His confidence had crumbled, leaving only desperation etched into his face. The carefully constructed image of power he had built was shattered. He realized, in raw, stark clarity, that the balance of authority had shifted. The Alpha King stepped forward from the shadows, his golden eyes blazing, the weight of his presence pressing down like the very sun itself. He did not rush to her, did not touch her. His power needed no gesture to announce itself. The pack felt it in the air, in their chests, in the instinctive recognition of strength that could not be challenged. "You have all witnessed lies," he said, voice smooth but sharp, cutting through the whispers and murmurs. "You have watched her endure false accusations, humiliation, and chains designed to break her spirit." Heads lowered. Some wolves had gasped, some clenched fists, but all eyes were fixed on him. "She is not the one who betrayed this pack," he continued, gaze sweeping the circle, resting briefly on the X with unflinching clarity. "The truth is plain. The lies end here." At his words, her wolf surged fully into the world. It rose with her, luminous and powerful, golden eyes glowing with untamed energy, hair bristling, claws flexing as if she had grown larger, stronger, fierce in a way that left the pack awed and trembling. The X staggered back, fear overtaking his arrogance. The whispers had turned to murmurs of shock. No one had anticipated this. Not the elders, not the warriors, not the packmates who had doubted her silently for years. The Alpha King finally closed the distance, stepping forward until only a span of breath separated them. His gaze met hers, and the bond between them, newly confirmed, undeniable, tangled in the space between them. "You belong to no one but yourself," he said, voice steady, reverberating through the hall and into her chest. "But I claim you as my mate. Not by force, not by law, but by choice, by truth, by bond." Her heart stopped. Her wolf stirred in full recognition, answering him in a roar of acceptance and power. The energy between them rippled outward, tangible, undeniable, a presence the entire pack could feel. Eyes widened. Some fell to their knees instinctively. Respect. Awe. Fear. Recognition of power that demanded obedience. The X fell to his knees, the mask of dominance finally shattered. "Impossible," he muttered, barely audible. The Alpha did not relent. "You will answer for your lies," he said, voice low and lethal. "And the pack will know the truth you tried to hide." A wave of quiet swept through the assembly. Even the elders had no words, unable to challenge the authority that stood before them, combined with the raw power of her wolf now fully manifested. She stepped forward, chains finally falling from her wrists as if gravity itself recognized her freedom. Her gaze met the alpha's, and for the first time, she did not feel small, overlooked, or broken. She was seen, protected, powerful. The pack bowed in recognition. The hierarchy had shifted. The Alpha King's choice was final. And she, the girl they had forgotten, now stood claimed, unstoppable, radiant. Her wolf purred, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the ground and the bones of all who stood near, echoing the truth. She had endured. She had awakened. She had been chosen. And the X, once cruel, once confident, was finally exposed. Justice was complete. Power had returned to where it belonged. Her hand found his, lightly, as they stood side by side. No words were needed. The bond, the claim, the promise, they were all evident in the charged silence between them. For the first time, she felt truly safe. For the first time, she knew that her strength, her wolf, and her mate, the Alpha, would never let the darkness touch her again. The pack had witnessed her triumph. And the girl who had endured for so long was finally whole. The morning sun broke over the pack grounds like a promise. Its golden light spilled across the stone pathways, illuminating the faces of wolves who had once doubted her, now bowing in quiet acknowledgement. She stood beside the Alpha King, shoulders straight, eyes bright with the fire of someone who had survived storms that would have broken others. Chains no longer bound her wrists. Fear no longer gripped her chest. Her wolf moved in harmony with her, a steady pulse of strength beneath her skin, alive and free. She had emerged from darkness, and the world seemed to notice her in a way it had never done before. The X had been stripped of his rank, cast down from the platform he had so arrogantly claimed. His lies and cruelty had been exposed before the entire pack. He had no shield, no allies, only the bitter taste of his own failure. His eyes found hers briefly, hungry, bitter, defeated, and then he was gone, swallowed by the judgment of the pack and the inevitability of justice. She took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp air of the forest that bordered the pack grounds. The smell of pine and earth, sunlight and morning mist, filled her senses. Every detail reminded her of what she had endured and of what she had gained: freedom, recognition, power, and, most importantly, a mate who saw her fully, who had chosen her with deliberate care. The Alpha's presence beside her was steady and grounding. He did not need to speak for her wolf to know he was there. He did not need to reach for her hand for her heart to feel protected. Every glance, every shift of his posture, communicated loyalty, devotion, and a strength that would never waver. She smiled faintly, an expression soft yet resolute. "I never thought I'd see the day," she whispered, almost to herself. "You have grown," he said quietly, his voice a low warmth that settled in her chest. "Stronger than you realize. And you will continue to grow." Her wolf responded, a deep, soothing hum within her, acknowledging his words, acknowledging his presence. It was no longer just a bond of survival, it was a bond of power, of trust, of destiny. Together, they walked through the pack grounds. Wolves lowered their heads, stepping aside, recognizing authority in both of them now. Some whispered her name in awe, others dared not speak at all. She met their gazes without fear, without shame, without hesitation. She had endured, yes, but no longer. The elders approached, offering tentative nods of respect. The wrongs had been corrected, but the lessons remained. She allowed herself a quiet satisfaction in knowing the pack had witnessed not just her survival, but her emergence as someone unbroken, someone to be reckoned with. The Alpha paused at the edge of the forest, looking out over the trees and the horizon beyond. His hand found hers, lightly, a gesture of unity and quiet reassurance. She squeezed his fingers, a simple acknowledgement that they would face the future together. The wind stirred through the trees, carrying with it the scent of freedom, of renewal, of life reclaimed. She closed her eyes, feeling it ripple through her wolf, through the bond that tethered them together. No longer the girl who endured. Now, she was the woman who rose. The wolf who awakened. The mate who stood beside a king. And though the road ahead would bring challenges, enemies, and tests of power, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never again stand alone. The Alpha leaned closer, voice a low promise meant only for her. We are stronger together. She rested her head against his shoulder, letting the warmth of him anchor her in a world that had once tried to destroy her. Her wolf purred, responding to his presence, to the claim, to the life they would now build side by side. Sunlight spilled over them, golden and unwavering. And for the first time in her life, she smiled without fear, without doubt, without hesitation. The girl who had been hidden, rejected, and silenced had finally been seen. The girl who had endured had become the woman who would never again bow. The pack watched, the forest whispered, and the world, finally, knew her name.